Three, two, one. All right. Today we are on with Briggs Elsperger. Briggs, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, hello. I am located out in South Dakota. I am a software developer for a company called Human Care Systems. We build software to help people take medications properly. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm happy to be talking with you.
Cool. So, your team currently is all remote, right?
Yep, sure is.
And did you start out as remote software developer? Sort of, how did you get to where you are now in your current position? Let's sort of go back to the beginning.
So, with just all the way back at the beginning, or
yeah, kind of first line of code.
All right. So I used to be a firefighter, and I decided that wasn't for me. So I quit. I moved to another city within South Dakota. So not a big upgrade, but it was a slight upgrade. And I just found a course online called the Odin Project, and I self-taught myself with that. Spent a lot of time with that. Eventually, it was about a year after that, I managed to secure my first job in another city in the state. I moved over there, and this was in Sioux Falls. I moved there, joined in, worked with some tech I've never seen before, the IBM I with some PHP, which I didn't study, but I managed to do just fine with it with the stuff I had learned. A year into that, I basically needed to move again. I didn't like the city, so I told my boss I either need to go remote or I'm gonna have to find a new job, and he opted to give me a remote. So then I moved out to Rapid City, which is as far across the state as you can move, and spent my time setting up stuff there, and been working remotely ever since that. I don't no longer work for that company. I work for a company the Human Care Systems company I talked about. They're based in Boston. And I had been remote with them from day one, other than the first week they flew me out to onboard me and meet the team.
So what language did you learn initially when you first took that online course?
When I first started, I learned Ruby, JavaScript Ruby web developer course, Ruby on Rails. I have not ever worked with Ruby on Rails professionally, but it gave me the foundations I needed to move into anything else I needed. So the first job I did was a PHP, Node, and Vue job. And this one I'm at now is Node and Vue.
So pretty much all JavaScript all the way down.
Yep, basically.
So what year was that you took that first course?
Oh, that would have been, 2018? Early 2018.
So how long was that course?
Well, it varies depending on who's learning, how much time you have to put into it. It's all self-paced. It took me just over a year to do it. It's a pretty comprehensive and long course. I've seen people get through it in 6 months, so that don't have a job and don't have to worry about anything else.
So it's not like
unheard of though.
It's not like a Udemy course that, I've knocked those out. Like I want to, touch up on Rails or something like that. I've knocked those out in a day. It's you're diving in and you're really committed to this.
Yeah. It's a very big, long, comprehensive, self-taught course. It comes with the biggest asset though is the community it comes with. You have a lot of people to ask questions to and build a relationship with, and that's been vital in my career, especially for remote. My current job, I got recommended to from a person on there.
Oh, so that's wow. So really paying off.
A huge amount of networking I've done on there. And I still spend time there after this day. I write lessons and help out with the community there. They've brought me on as a core team member now. So while working through the course, are you writing a lot of code? Are you building applications? Are you doing what are the core concepts really covered in there? So the core of the course is be a programmer first, an engineer, then branch out into specifics. So the first thing you do is you learn a little bit about HTML, and then you go jump right in and re-implement the Google homepage, which for somebody that has just started within day 1 or 2 trying to do that is actually a pretty big task.
Right.
But the idea is to get people thinking about how this stuff works. It's not expected to be done in an hour like, anybody experienced could do. Then we move them on right into JavaScript, into writing, you're not just hello world, but one of the few first projects is Etch-a-Sketch with the DOM. We get you into rock, paper, scissors, tic-tac-toe, just kind of your basic 101 projects. Then you move on to bigger scope, like when you start learning into Node or Rails, you start building pieces of different websites. So eventually, one of the final projects for the Rails course is actually implementing Facebook at kind of a basic level. You don't have to do the ad integration and all that, but you get
live
the friends
streaming.
list. Yeah. Well, even that's coming easier nowadays with the socket stuff out there, which actually might not be a bad idea to start looking into adding. But there's you start, it's project based. You don't just learn this stuff and code along. You're let loose with writing your own stuff, and the community there is the biggest asset. Again, you get stuck, ask somebody, they'll come and help you out.
So are they teaching you like the thing with coding boot camps is they're generally very, very practical. So it's sort of the code that you would be writing as like a junior web developer somewhere. And I've always found it interesting, sort of the distinction between the ultra practical coding boot camps and what I sort of experienced when I first started learning software development in college as a computer science major, which was like all theoretical stuff. It was like data structures, it was algorithm analysis, it was like high level math, things like that. Like I had never heard of Git before I got into like Git, which is like almost programming 101. I'd never heard of that until I got into the real world. I didn't know what the DOM was. I wouldn't know how to build like a web app or anything like that. I dropped out, but I was there for 2.5 years. And it's like I said, it's interesting, sort of the dichotomy. Do you supplement that with any? Do they supplement that with any of the more theoretical kinds of things, or is it just like?
Yeah, that's part of why it takes a lot longer too, is because like I said, our main goal is to be an engineer first.
Right.
Engineer, for all you people out there that want to debate that topic on web developers, but
what web versus
yeah
web.
At the end of the day, we're building applications, not websites, is what our goal is. So we're not just slinging HTML and CSS. We're getting into the nitty gritty of everything. And so, a lot of the stuff we do teaches, how do you write something efficiently? What is big O? We get into that a little bit, not too deep. We get into it on a practical level at a point where you can think about it, but you necessarily aren't going to be able to calculate it out. And that's something that we expect you to do on your own. We're not going to just hand that to you. That's not part of what we're teaching yet. Though it is growing and expanding, and eventually we'll bring it into that. But it is structured kind of like a boot camp, but with way more content and depth than your typical, 6-month boot camp.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about sort of the boot camp style things is it gives you like a portfolio of things to sort of show off. So if you are looking for a job, you get to point to a website and say, I built this, and this. Whereas with my like with my CS degree, or lack thereof, I can point to like translate base 2 to base 8 really quickly. But unless you're building like really, really low level stuff, I don't know how ultra relevant that is.
Well, and even that can be Googled pretty easy too.
Yeah.
but you can't just Google your way through how to architect an application. Not
So
very easy.
so what was the what was the course called?
The Odin Project. You can
The
find it on
Odin Project.
theodinproject.com.
So after you graduated there, where did you go?
Well, I didn't actually quite finish it. I got through their Ruby course, then I branched off and I learned Node. And
Hmm.
I learned it just basically reading the documentation, starting to understand how CRUD worked and how APIs worked. Just a lot of research. After that, I moved on to writing a few of my own applications for like freelancing, basically. Did one for a local fire department to hold up trainings, and it's gonna sound real redneck, but they do a gun drawing every
Uh-huh.
day. They draw it out of you buy a calendar, you get your name in, and they needed a way to tell people who won, and their current site they had was broken all the time, never stayed up. So I built them a Node and I think I used Pug actually at the time app just to help them manage that and display it. And it's been up ever since, so that was pretty cool. Then I built a website for a church. This is just your standard just single page website with some information on it. And then after that, I had applied for that job I was talking about earlier in Sioux Falls, and they hired me there.
So your initial sort of clients, or the first way you actually started making money with programming, was just from local clients,
Mm-hmm.
just sort of freelance stuff. Um, did you learn anything about sort of client management?
Yes. Oh yeah.
uh,
So
could you elaborate a little bit?
yeah, absolutely. So a few things. I learned first of all, you need a contract. Absolutely need a contract with really good specced out
Mm-hmm.
specs, for lack of a better word. And also on top of that, you need to have one singular contact that you can rely on. If you go to multiple different people trying to get the specifications that you didn't get ahead of time, you're going to run into a lot of trouble. And on top of that, you can always fall back on your contract. It keeps you honest. It keeps them
Uh-huh.
honest. It prevents people from trying to take advantage of you. You make sure you get paid that way, and it's just a much more effective way to work. And other than that, just leveraging your own network of people when you get stuck, especially when you're freelancing alone. You don't have many people you can talk to. You need a community to say, hey, is this a good idea to architect this in this way or not? And a lot of times that helps you out. And that is the Odin Project again helped me with that. The community there is phenomenal. They gave me some pointers when I needed it and helped me become successful in the freelance. And I'll tell you though, I'm real glad I'm not doing that anymore.
The freelancing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
freelancing is hard. I've been on the freelance roller coaster before. It's hard. Where
Uh,
how did you get those first clients?
I leveraged my network. I put some stuff out. Asked a few people, hey, do you know anyone who might need a project made or something? It can be an app, a website, whatever you want. If one of them wound up contacting me through some people. I don't even remember who specifically, but just asked some people around. The fire department I used to, I said I was a firefighter. I've been a volunteer with that fire department since I was 16. And so that helped a lot with that.
Oh, so they knew you.
Yeah, they reached out to me though too.
Uh-huh.
I didn't approach them. I felt that was a conflict of interest to reach out to them. But they asked me and we found a way to make it work.
So then your first job, your first real job, what was the process for that like? Did they just have an application online that you saw, or was it through a connection?
I found that one through LinkedIn. Or not LinkedIn, Indeed.
Uh-huh.
I was just looking for jobs, applying for them because I was ready to move on to something else that wasn't, connection based. I wanted to work on an app instead of work on a bunch of them. I didn't like the maintenance side of the applications when you have to come back to the old apps again. It's just a pain. I'd rather work on one app across the board, straight up, build it, make it bigger. So was just looking around on Indeed and wound up finding them, applied, and they gave me a call. And that was so. After they gave me a call, I went down to Sioux Falls, which is about a 4-hour drive, and just went in for an interview, talked to them, and it went pretty well. And that's about it. It was a pretty informal interview, surprisingly. They didn't really ask me any code questions.
How big is that company?
That company, when I got hired, was about 8 people.
8 people?
Yeah.
So how big was the dev team?
So everybody there was a dev, including the boss. However, it was split between RPG developers, which is or RPG LE, if you want to be technical. They're a lot like COBOL developers, but they had a web division, which was me and another guy when I got hired, who then decided to leave 3 months into my employment there, and that's how I became a lead dev in 3 months. It is not. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't recommend that. No, we managed it though. I managed to get her. Like, he was there just long enough to get my head around the concepts and the stuff they used.
So you had just basically a phone interview, and then they were like, come down to Sioux Falls, which is a 4-hour drive. So not like you're walking around the block to go speak with them. And then you get there. What was the interview process like there? You said it was pretty informal?
Yeah. So I walked in and there was nobody at the front desk, and all of a sudden there was a dog barking at me. And well, I looked around, finally found a old guy sitting at a desk, and I asked him what was up. And he went out and called the guy, and turns out they were on lunch. And that should have been a red flag, but South Dakota is pretty slim pickings for a junior developer. Self-taught without a degree. So I stuck around for 5 minutes. They showed back up and took me to the conference room, and we pulled up some of my projects on their projector and walked through what I had done and stuff. And they asked me a few questions. Go ahead.
When you say walk through, how high of a level were you walking through? Was it just like, almost on like a visual basis, just like, oh, I built this, or were you digging into like more technical stuff, or like, tell me about that process a little bit.
Yeah. So long story short, they put it up. I pulled it up on the screen. I showed it off to them, what it did, how it worked. And then I kind of explained the tech and the decisions I made behind it. We never really got into code though. I assume they looked at my code because it was on public GitHub. Right. It was on my portfolio. So I assume they checked that out. But no, I just kind of talked over why I made some decisions and what kind of technology this app is built in and why I chose that tech. But there was not really, I really didn't have to defend my application and stuff. So like
you think they were looking for a thought process there?
Yes. Yeah, it was pretty clear they were looking for somebody who could work their way around a problem and not somebody that just knew like React or something like that.
Did they emphasize any cultural things that they were looking for?
Yeah, so one of the weirder parts of that interview was one of the guys said that, I'm glad I got to talk to you. I just get a feeling about people whenever I talk to them, if they're going to be good or not. So I didn't know what to think of that at the time, but yeah, it seemed like they were looking for someone who kind of thought like them and that kind of thing. Though it turned out later that I didn't really think like them too well. The cultural differences were there, but we got along. It was just different. And
so then after your in-person interview, you drive back 4 hours. Did they ever tell you how many people they were considering for the position?
I asked, and they told me there were like 3 people they were talking to. They didn't really go into any more depth than that, but I felt pretty good leaving that interview. You could tell that they were happy to have me there.
And so after that interview, what happens? You go home, drive back 4 hours, you sit around, wait for the phone call? Like what?
Well, I went home. They emailed me and said it was nice to talk and that they'll let me know pretty soon what's going on. And then a couple days later, got a phone call while he was driving his Corvette, and yeah, I could hear him romping on it,
Revving the engine a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he gave me an offer with a dollar amount, and I said yeah, and then so I packed my bags and moved. It helped out. My girlfriend was going to college there too, so we made that work out pretty nice.
And then you were there for a while, and when did the idea of like remote programming get into your brain?
Well, I wanted to be remote from the start. That was my initial goal. I was applying for jobs across the country right after the freelance stuff. I got some bites back, but not a ton. So I had wanted to be remote from the start, just for the simple fact that I have more opportunity that way. Here in South Dakota, we have, this is not a joke, we have more cattle than people.
Right.
You can fact check that if you want. That's true.
Oh, I believe it.
So I knew in South Dakota there wasn't very many good opportunities for me to grow and meet people that I can network with. And so after doing all that, and then I wasn't too happy at this job that I had at the time. I wasn't happy with the work environment. The dogs that were in there never got baths, so they just unclean and
smelled.
Yeah. But I mean, they were nice dogs. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. They just, they like to play in the mud a lot. And I just didn't like that. And so, and there's other reasons too, but I don't need to go into that too deep.
So while you were there, you
straight
were
up decided I hadn't.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just so eventually it just got to the point where I liked the work I was doing, but I didn't like the environment, and I was going to have to. I was paying for 2 apartments at the time because my girlfriend had to move and hadn't found a job quite yet. So I had been paying for hers in another city because for school, and paying for another one out in that city. It was just getting to be too expensive. So I was fed up and just told him, or asked the boss what I could do, and he said, "Fine, go ahead."
So how was that transition? How was that transition from in office to remote? Was it easy? Was it difficult?
The hardest part about it was the fact that we were expected to talk with clients directly. We had no sales team or anything like that. It was us.
What do you mean directly? Like on the phone or in person?
Both.
Okay.
A lot of times the clients would come into the office and we'd talk through stuff.
So you're a software developer, but you're also like an account manager at this time.
Yeah.
And why do these clients care about code?
They don't. They just care about the feature at the end of the day.
So you're doing feature reports to clients as a software developer. Gotcha.
Yeah.
In person.
In person and over the phone and through email. It was that was part of the reasons why I wanted to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that if you come into a job expecting to just, write code and all of a sudden they're like, oh, by the way, deal with all these clients. You're like, I don't know. No?
Yeah, I'm like, that's not my skill set, but all right. Don't yell at me.
Did they give you any training on how to do that, or was it just?
Oh, nope. I just got thrown right into the fire with that whole place. All that training was just thrown right into the fire, including their setup. The tech lead there had a hard time getting me set up, and I had to figure out most of it on my own. And it was a very interesting and good learning experience, but I wouldn't recommend it for anybody else.
So then let's hop back into the transition to remote. Mm-hmm. Obviously you can't meet with clients face to face anymore, but you're probably still talking to them on the phone. How did your communication with your team change through that transition?
So basically I just had to make more phone calls. We didn't have anything set up for we had Slack, but we didn't utilize it very well. And basically I just had to they paid for a new phone number for me so I could just call them. And that worked out pretty well.
So would they have like morning meetings, like a stand up, like something like that? Or you're just sort of willy nilly, like, hey, we need to talk about this. Are you free now?
Yeah, pretty much. So since the web team was one person, which was me for a while, which we wound up hiring another person later who wound up finding me that job in Boston. But him and I would just collaborate throughout the day. We didn't really need to do too much, but whenever we were stuck on something or needed to talk through some code or whatever, we just call each other. I'd call the office and he'd pick up the phone at the office, and that was pretty much it. There wasn't any formal meetings or anything. In fact, they didn't even have like a Jira board or anything. I also did the project management.
All the project management?
Yep.
Project manager, account.
But billing.
Account manager, project manager,
Product
tech
owner.
lead, product owner, and communications manager.
Yep. I did everything.
All wrapped into one.
Yep. Everything but bill.
Do they teach that stuff in boot camps? I don't think
no, they don't. That was just me being lucky. I just managed to fight my way through it.
So how long were you remote at that company for?
I was remote for that company for around 5-6 months.
And in terms of your personal life, how did that change?
Like my relationships with my friends and family and such is what you're asking?
Like how, like, did you have more free time? Were you able to work on your own schedule? How did you manage that balance? Things like that.
Okay. So yeah, my quality of life improved significantly. A lot of it was due to not having to stop and talk with people about stuff that wasn't work related when I had stuff to do. So I could get my stuff done and have more free time for myself. So I didn't feel like I had to work late anymore or anything like that. I could just get what I needed done and I could be done for the day.
Were you on did you have to be on a specific schedule? Were they expecting you to be on the phone, like answering questions from 9 to 5, or was it just show up for meetings and besides that, do it, get work done?
It was kind of a mix. It depended on what was going on. If we had some critical issue going on, of course I needed to be available. Because I was the guy to fix it.
Right.
And other than that, I didn't really get checked up on at all. It's just I got stuff done, talked to clients. That was it. I just had to have my phone on me in case they called me with a critical bug or something.
So then one of the things that I noticed going from in office to remote is I really had to start managing myself, like planning out when I'm going to work, when I'm going to go to the gym in the middle of the day, or now I travel a lot, when am I going to go surf in the middle of the day, like planning all of that out and becoming that manager of one. Did you experience anything like that where you were like, I have to like think through, my days now?
Not too much, because I would just get on I think I got on around 8, and then I just worked through the day because the work I did was so varied. I never really got too bored, frustrated, but not bored. And so no, I didn't really have many issues with having to plan out my day and stuff. I just took lunch when I was hungry and came back, finished the day out, and that was it.
So you were there for 5 or 6 months.
It was pretty simple.
So you're there for 5 or 6 months, and then where does that the transition to your current position happen? How does that sort of come about?
So that came about with that one other guy that I mentioned we hired. He actually was learning with me on the Odin Project at the same time. He lived in Boston, and I got him a remote interview with the company because we needed someone else. We couldn't find anyone that they were willing to hire. So we finally got this guy. His name was Jacob, and got him hired on. He moved to South Dakota, lived with me for 3 months, and then started
From Boston
working
to
for the
South
company
Dakota.
Yep, he drove too. He
Wow.
drove 24 hours. Yep, and he's a hell of a guy, real good guy, and real smart. We basically built a lot of the new infrastructure for the company into Node and Vue instead of the PHP stuff they had. That was an absolute mess. But that's another story. So he came down. He decided he didn't like it. He wanted to move back to Boston. He just needed some experience. So he, of course, I don't blame him either. So he started interviewing with places in Boston because he was willing to move. I wasn't able to at the time. So he was willing to move. He interviewed with a company, got an offer. Then he interviewed with another company, got an offer. So he took the job at Liberty Mutual and mentioned to these other guys that he interviewed with, they offered him, they said, hey, talk to this guy. So they contacted me, and then I interviewed with them, and they hired me. And so then I've been remote for them since.
And this is your current position.
Yes.
What was that interview process like?
So that one was much more formal than what I had been expecting. Like the other interviews I've had more, just 2 of those, obviously. So the first thing was I just chatted with someone from HR to make sure I wasn't a crazy dude.
Right.
And then
Good to know.
Then eventually, yeah. And then I got to talk to the tech lead about some of the technologies that I've used and I've played with, and he sent me a coding test. It was a simple to-do list with a Node backend with authentication.
Okay,
And
so that's interesting. So the coding test, because these are things that I'm kind of interested in. Could you go into that a little bit? I know you were just talking about it briefly, but how long did it take? How long did they expect you to take it?
So they didn't give me many guidelines on it. They basically said use a front-end framework, use a Node API backend, and it has to have authentication and proper error handling. And
did they give you any code to start, or was it just blank? Did they just here's a Google Doc with requirements, go?
Yep, that's all they gave me.
So how long did it take you to do?
So that's the hard one. I'd have to guess it probably took me about 3.5 hours. But that's a real rough estimate because during that time, my grandpa was in the hospital and I was there helping out with him. He had a severe brain bleed. And so I was there all night working on this.
So you're writing this in the hospital.
Yeah. Yep.
Did they let you know how many people they were considering for the position before they gave you the test?
No, they did not. I didn't ask either. I was preoccupied at the time a little bit. I didn't have everything all figured out.
Did let's say there were 100 people they were considering versus you're one of 2. Would that have changed the way you worked on the project?
I don't think so.
Really?
For a couple reasons. One is because I'm going to build the best product I can in the time that they gave me. They wanted it within the week, and I wanted to get it done a day early just to be be that guy. Get it done early.
Show off.
Hey. That's what. Hey, you got to show off if you want a position, dude. But so I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
You were talking about grandpa in the hospital.
Okay, so I'm going to build that app as best I can in the time they gave me. And I fulfilled the requirements. I went a little over the top, just a touch, which I would have done anyway. And I think I added like a theme picker just for fun. It was pretty easy to add. Looks good. And then after that, for my second point, it wouldn't have changed how I interviewed for it because I'm going to present my best self no matter what. And if I'm not one of the 100 that gets it, so be it. At least I got to put a good effort forward and probably learn something along the way. It's experience. Interview is experience too.
Yeah. I mean, my personal thinking, and this, maybe it's personality flaw. I don't know. If I'm one of 200 people that this company is interviewing and they want me to go write a bunch of code for them, the odds of me doing it are probably pretty slim.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm one of two, I'll be, I'll write the best damn code you ever seen. But, I want to make sure that the probability that I'm getting a return on the time and investment that I'm putting in at this stage of the interview process, is that there's basically a high probability that I'm going to get hired by this company.
So I think the other thing that plays into that with this specific situation is they contacted me specifically.
Gotcha.
I didn't apply for that job. I don't know if I would have applied and spent a lot of time for a job that had 200 applicants already. Maybe I would have. It really depends on the position. If it's not something I'm interested in, skip it.
Right.
But this one had pretty much checked all the boxes I was looking for in the first place. So I really wanted this position, and they, like I said, they contacted me, so that weighs in a little more. They didn't even make me put in an application. They just said, send me your resume and we'll call that your entry. So that worked out real nice.
So then after the test project, which you did in the hospital overnight, took you about 3.5 hours. You submitted that. Where'd they go from there?
So after that, they contacted me again, and it was not even a week later. I was still in the hospital. I did talk to them out in the car.
Did they know you were in the hospital?
Yeah, I made it clear.
Okay.
I let them know the situation, and I didn't want to, just all of a sudden say, hey, I can't make this, and then have to explain everything. So I kept them in the loop the whole time. They were very understanding and good people. That helped me put more effort into what I was doing too. But so they made me defend my application. They walked through it with me. They had me explain the decisions I made through the code this time.
Right.
And explain all that. And then they asked some questions. Like one of them they mentioned was, what about bots attacking the login form? Because I neglected to put rate limiting on that or CAPTCHA. So they talked about that. They asked me what I should do with that, because you're going to have defects in code when you write an app in 3 hours. You know?
Yeah. Overnight in the hospital.
Yeah. And they understood that. And I said basically that I would probably handle it on the deployment side and add rate limiting per IP. That way you can keep it logged and stuff. And they said, well, what about a CAPTCHA? Would you consider that? And I said, yeah. And then I kind of elaborated and said, well, both would work fine.
Isn't that almost like, that's less of a technical question and more of like a user experience question, right?
Yes and no. I since this is a full stack position, I think it was relevant. But I see where you're coming from. It's going to depend on it's going to ultimately depend on the requirements at the time. Mm-hmm. And turns out later the other guy they hired another guy, which his story is incredible. He's 19 and they hired him. So he wound up implementing CAPTCHA on the login form on their app. Mm-hmm. So they were interviewing relevant topics to what their application was going to be.
So then you defended the app on the code level, which I love that idea of just like opening up a code editor. You wrote a bunch of this code. Walk me through your decision process. And I think it's a lot easier to do that after the fact as a programmer in an interview setting than sort of on the spot where it's like, okay, here's a problem. We're going to watch you solve it. Just because, there's just so much more pressure to perform right there. And that's not the environment that, you work in.
Right.
Especially remote, you have your whole setup and you're like, okay, give me like 3 hours. I'm going to go solve this problem. And then, I'll walk you through my thought process afterwards.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the going through code is a much more effective way to understand how somebody thinks than just giving them an algorithm to solve.
Right.
And then have them go through it. Look, I think the best interviews I've ever had. I've had 2 or 3 kind of similar to this. One of my favorite ones, I wound up turning them down though because they wanted me to move to a place I did not want to go. And they had me pull up one of my apps and talk about it and go through like what I had built, what I had done, why I did it this way. Instead of having to build something for them, they explained it as, if you're building it for us, you're going to tailor it specifically for us. We want to know how you think.
Right.
And so going through that application of my own with them.
So you open up a code editor, you do a screen share, and you say, and you let your brain fly.
Yep. And then their senior devs would ask questions when they had them. It was a pretty really neat interview process. They gave me suggestions and talked through like, here's what we would have done different. And it was a incredible learning experience. On top of being a really good interview, I was able to be my best self while doing that because it was code I was comfortable with and not something I had to write up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I structure, interviews when I'm, just talking to software developers, is I want to see, like, show me your code and let me get into your brain and let me see how it works.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I believe that's really effective.
So your current team, how many developers are on your current team?
So, okay, let's see. I think there's about 35 now. They're growing.
5.
They're growing at a very, very rapid rate. When I got hired, yes, yep. Now they are with COVID, but other than that, I'd say about 50% were remote, and it's by choice. So they had the option to go to the office if they wanted.
And is that all U.S. or is that global?
Global.
Is it primarily U.S. with like some stragglers, or is it just completely, distributed?
It's primarily U.S. because of time zones make working together a little better. There's a lot of asynchronous communication though, so it's not significantly a problem to have people across the world. They're just looking to hire the best devs they can.
So what's your tool stack for communication and just productivity for your current position?
So for what we use Jira for our project management stuff, which is pretty standard across the board, it seems.
Right.
We use Bitbucket for our repos. Then we come down to just using Slack and Google Meet, I think they call it now.
Yeah.
So we use Google Meet.
New name every day on that one.
Yeah, it seems like it, huh?
Yeah.
You want to call it Hangouts, but that's different. Kinda. But
I don't even know anymore.
So yeah, we have our morning scrum on Google Hangout or Google Meet. There I go again. On Google Meet, and it's about usually 15-20 minutes, go over some stuff. And any time that we need to do individual communications, screen share with somebody, pair program a little bit, we'll jump on just the Slack chat, just the audio chat with that, and share screen through that, or we'll use VS Code Live Share. And that's pretty much really all we have for that, other than the odd all company call, which is Zoom. But other than that, that's basically our stack. We keep it pretty simple. Also the Google Suite for emails and stuff.
Is your communication more Slack or email based?
Slack by far.
Slack.
Yep.
So what are you using email for?
The people that aren't on the dev team, like sometimes we'll get emails like saying, "Hey, don't forget to do your
so your training." Slack is solely developer?
No, not necessarily, but basically the email stuff comes through as like the important stuff that needs a track record. Slack just it's kind of a free for all, really.
Right. Is there one thing I found about going remote, and especially as a freelancer, you really don't get this, but is company culture. When I was in office at a startup, it was actually this startup right here. We had a really strong company culture. We were just literally packed in together every single day for a year, solving problems together. And then I went remote, and I had never met anyone that I was working with. I never met them in person. Communicated with them, maybe 2 or 3 times a week on a 15-minute video chat. But besides that, I was really just on my own. Just.
Well, so this company, we're fortunate enough to have the funds they fly us out every 6 months or so, just to have like a hangout kind of thing, and a hackathon they do every year, which is just kind of help build that company culture and stuff like that. And then they send out merch every so often to help with that too. It's been a pretty good. I've made some friends there that I chat with privately outside of work now, and I wouldn't say it's a extremely strong company culture, but just right, where it's not too overbearing, but it's also not, corporate nothingness. There's pride there. There's a lot of pride.
So we're kind of coming up on 45 minutes here, which is a bit longer than I was expecting. Let's hop into just some more, lightning round style questions.
Sure.
And we've covered a decent amount of these just in conversation, so I'll skip out anything that would be redundant. But in your opinion, what is one quality that makes like a really awesome developer?
The willingness to be wrong. You have to admit you're wrong to be able to learn. And if you're never going to admit you're wrong, you'll never learn anything, and you're going to be stuck in your own rut.
So dropping the ego, knowing that there's things that you don't know, and understanding that, everyone has something to teach you, basically.
Yes. Yep. Have a learner's mindset is another way to put that. Always be a student. Always.
Okay. What do you think makes an awesome teammate?
The being accepting of criticism. If you can't take criticism, you'll never be a good teammate, because you can never grow as a team. Your code's going to suck. And if somebody's going to, criticize you, not necessarily, I'm talking constructive criticism, that kind of thing. If you're not handling yourself appropriately, you're never going to be a part of the team and be able to grow with the team. If somebody's afraid to criticize you because you're going to lash out, your code's going to suck and the entire product is going to suck, which makes you a bad team member.
As a remote software developer, how do you structure your day for remote or just for productivity?
So the first thing I do is get breakfast. I know a lot of people skip it, but it's a good token to start my day. I get breakfast, I jump on the Scrum, and then I'm ready to work for the day. And then when lunch comes around, within a 3-hour window, I take it, usually between 11 and 1, depending on the day and the meetings. And then after that, come back to work till time's up.
And when do you usually tone it down for the day?
So I start at 7:30 in the morning, because that's when the Scrum is. That's about the only synchronous thing we really need to be. But I just stick around and keep working. It's not worth going back.
7:30 a.m.
My time.
Your time. Yeah.
Yep. I'm a 2-hour difference, so normally it's 9:30.
So they're in Boston. Do you have anyone in like Australia or something that's doing this at like 3 a.m?
No, because they'd be put on a different team.
Gotcha. So your team is location.
Yeah, it's pretty loose. It's
gotcha.
They wouldn't be on at 3 a.m. If we had to, we'd adjust time.
Adjust accordingly.
I'm just not too picky. Yeah, I'm just not too picky, so I haven't said
anything. Right. So then Scrum, breakfast, write code, do whatever you need to do, work.
And I'm done about 3:30 my time.
When do you decide to hang it up? Is there a set point, or is it just I'm tired, my brain's not working, so time to go?
Well, even if I'm not tired, because I like to work on side projects outside of work, I don't want to be tired when I work on those either. So once I'm done at 3:30ish, unless there's some like critical feature I need to get out, I just hang it up right then, right after I've put in my hours. Just no more. I think that's very important, especially working from home, because it's super easy to just to keep working, because your workstation's right next to everything else. You don't have to think about it, and I have to personally make a conscious effort to shut it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for me, there's always the internal mental battle of like, I'm in such a groove right now. Do I shut this off? Like it's 11:30 p.m. and all I want to do is like, continue busting on whatever I'm doing, or should I hang it up and hop back, go to sleep, wake up early, and hop back into it in the morning? I still don't know the answer to that.
So I figure that I like to expand my skill set after work. So once work's done, if I still have energy, which some days you just don't, but I'll go and I'll go start reading something, read some articles, go look up something. And recently I've been looking at Rust and been edging my way into learning Rust for that sweet WASM. And that's very very useful to use that energy for that, because at the end of the day, I like this company a lot, but as long as I'm doing the work I need to do, I don't need to put any more effort into this company, because it's not my company.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm putting in the effort that they need and what makes that company better, me putting effort into myself in turn gives them a return on that too.
Right.
The more skills I learn, the more I can apply them at my job, which helps out across the board. And that's also why they'll buy us books whenever we ask. So that's awesome.
That's what books do you take advantage of that?
I haven't until recently. Recently, I'm getting a architecture-based book because I just got moved onto the architecture team, and so I need to brush up a little on that. It not really architecture, but design patterns, like the Gang of Four and stuff. I need to brush up on that. And plus, it's cool to have books. So, I mean, it's cool to a nerd like me, but
right. So what skills do remote programmers need that are not so relevant to on-site programmers?
You need to be able to pace yourself. You don't have as many distractions to pull you away. Sometimes, like the coworker that walks up and says hi, that pulls you away a little bit. You can let your brain reset. But when you're working remote, you can just click mute on all your notifications, and then you can just streamline and go. However, sometimes that can be counterproductive because stepping away lets you retroactively learn stuff in your mind. I forgot what the term of that is. Passive learning, I think. And if you're doing that, a lot of times you come up with a better solution, because the people have told me before, if you're stuck on something, go take a shower, come back and you'll have it. And so that distraction that you get from talking with coworkers is kind of like that. It pulls your mind away. When you're working remote, you don't necessarily have that. So you're going to have to be able to pace yourself, use some Pomodoro or something like that. And that helps out a lot for me anyway. The other thing is you need to be able to focus. If you can't focus in your environment, you're not going to be productive and not useful. And that's a skill that can be learned just like any other.
Mm-hmm. So what is the best way for software developers to market themselves to either employers or clients?
So this one kind of gets split up between front end and back end developers. Even if you're a back end developer, you need to have a good looking portfolio, because at the end of the day, you're trying to impress HR. You can get past HR, you can talk your way through whatever you need. But getting through HR is the hardest thing you can do, especially for those of us that don't have a degree, that are self-taught. Those get thrown in the bin pretty easy sometimes. So you got to have a good looking resume and a good looking portfolio. Something that's a little bit flashy that you can show off, that'll catch somebody's eye. Because the person that has a nice looking portfolio that's easy to use,
that someone can play with.
Yes. Yep. You want to, because engagement, everyone talks about engagement. You want to keep them on that site as long as you can. One tactic I've used is I put a snake game in my site so that you can play snake. And I've been told by a few HR people, like, yeah, I spent 10 minutes on that.
Right.
Snake, come on. It takes nothing to make once you're at a skill level to be hired. So stuff like that really works out. It keeps them there. It keeps them remembering you, and then your name gets moved to the next pile. And eventually, hopefully you can talk your way through the rest and get your job.
Looking back, what would you tell yourself on your first day of programming?
Keep being persistent. That's it. You have to learn to be persistent.
You're not going to learn it on day one.
Yep. Grit will take you a long ways. Motivation dies, but grit does not.
What platform, language, or technology that you currently don't know would you most like to learn in the future?
Rust. I was already
Rust.
talking about that. Yep.
Why Rust?
Because it's really cool. I've played with C++ a little bit. I liked it, except you need to know so much to make anything safe and decent. And Rust seems like it. Rust seems like it helps a little bit with that. And me starting with JavaScript and Ruby, I'm pretty separated from the memory level of stuff. Rust, I believe, is a good bridge between that.
Right.
And that's not saying I can't write anything in C++ because I've written a basic game engine with it, but other than that, Rust just seems like the future too. And with the memory safety of it, it's just going to be the obvious choice in the next 10 years.
Stack Overflow's most loved developer language.
Is it?
I think so.
That's awesome.
If you could relay one message about programming or software development to people that are non-technical, what would that be?
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's hard. That's why stuff takes a long time and why it's expensive. It's very, very iterative and discovery based. Mm-hmm. You don't just necessarily know how to solve a problem right off the top of your head. You have to discover it as you go, because we run into a lot of bang it around.
You got to bang it around for a bit, and then the solution will emerge. But you might try this way, and okay, this works over here, but 10% of this worked over here. So we're going to take that 10% and we're going to try it this way. And 50% of that worked. So we'll take half of that and combine it with the 10% that worked from over here. And you just sort of mash it all together, throw out the junk, and then at least that's the way it ends up working a lot.
Yeah, then you wind up with 99% in the 1% edge case that you don't catch until later.
Yeah, I like the concept of making a mess and then cleaning it up.
Oh yeah.
So you write a bunch of stuff, you hack it all out, you try to solve the problem this way, maybe you try to solve it this way, and then you compare everything, and then you sort of you just the process of removal and tying everything up with a pretty bow and testing it, and then it works.
Yeah, you have to understand the problem before you can write good code for it. And that's part of the discovery, like I was talking about. You have to discover the solution.
So some people like to, Tim Ferriss talks about this. He likes to use writing to help with his thought process. It's almost, you can almost see that same sort of thing in code, where you're almost just coding out your thought process and trying different things. And it can help clarify your thinking that way.
I do believe pseudocode is a really good tool for that. I think it's wholly underused, as simple as it is. Writing out just, the basic outline of what you're trying to do, and then going to implement that outline in actual code. I found helping out in the Odin Project and stuff in the chat room with all the other new people there. I found that helps them understand what they're trying to write and break it down into pieces a lot better than just letting them write it all. Otherwise, you wind up with one big function instead of a bunch of smaller ones that are easier to refactor.
So what's one programming book that you think every programmer should read?
If you're a JavaScript programmer, it should be You Don't Know JS. But yep, that's a really good one.
Who is that by?
You can find it on GitHub. Oh gosh, Kyle. Oh, what's his name?
You don't have to. I thought you were about to say the author.
I was, but then it slipped my mind. It's Kyle something.
Is it available?
Pretty popular.
It's available on GitHub?
Yep, under Getify. If you search Getify, You Don't Know JS, you'll find it.
You'll find it, and it's available for free?
Yep. The first edition is. And the second edition isn't out yet, so.
And what's the book you're reading currently, or that you just bought?
Oh, it's still coming in the mail.
The design pattern book. Sounds interesting.
It's the one about the Gang of Four. I can't remember the name of it right now. It is design patterns, element of reusable object-oriented software.
Ah, sounds
Sound,
fun. Who's
sounds
that by?
dry. That is by Eric Gamma and Richard Helm.
Uh-huh. Can you say the name one more time?
Eric Gamma.
No,
and
no,
Richard
no, no.
Helm.
The name of the name of the book.
Oh, okay. All right. Design patterns, elements of reusable object-oriented software.
Wow. Way to appeal to the masses there.
Well, it looks like a college textbook, but
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
I've heard to read. So that's when I was told that I should read for that.
So what is your favorite tech product at the moment? It could be like a software product, it could be a hardware, it could be something you use at work.
My favorite thing, I had it around here, is actually a drawing tablet, like you would use for digital
like an
sketches.
Etch-a-Sketch?
Not quite. I had it right over here somewhere. I can't find it. But
it's like an iPad.
Kind of, except it's just like a square tablet thing that you plug into your computer, and it comes with a pen that I have right here. And you just can draw on it like you would a piece of paper, but it'll translate it to your screen. This works really, really well for drawing out like flow charts and stuff when you're just chatting with someone, because you can,
those are horrible to do with the mouse.
And make it. Yes. So this pen, along with that little drawing tablet, saves me a lot of time, and it works really, really well. I wish I had it here.
What is that called?
I just moved it. Oh, here it is. It's just a Huion digital drawing tablet. It's just a thin little, you just plug it in and it just works.
So this question is stolen from Tim Ferriss, but what is your favorite product under $100, just in general? Could be a toothbrush.
My favorite, good keyboard.
A good keyboard.
Yep.
What keyboard do you have?
Keyboard. I have one that is more $100, but I used to have one that was. I got a Ducky Shine 7.
Oh
nice,
gosh. Oh, those keyboards. Oh, I don't like those keyboards at all.
I that's why I only use it at home. I like the I don't like care about the RBG in it anyway.
I don't like keyboards with big buttons. That's not my thing. I like the Mac keyboard. It's like flat.
See, I don't work on the go very often, so having this has helped, and it's actually increased my typing speed after learning how to use it. You type a lot lighter when you don't want to bottom them out. And because before I got it, this is before I really started trying to learn how to type really well. I think I was at 70 words per minute, and I'm pushing 95 with like a 98% accuracy. So I'm pretty happy with that.
Amazing what you can do when you when you type all day.
Yeah.
I try to be mouseless. I try to do everything with the keyboard.
You run Vim?
No, I don't run Vim.
Oh, I use Vim. I use the Vim bindings in VS Code.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Vim a lot.
and you're all I haven't actually played around with Vim really ever.
It's worth giving it a shot. If it really does increase your productivity after you learn.
I've heard that, but I've also heard it's like a nightmare to learn.
It's not as bad as people think. If you just go to the terminal and type Vim tutor, one word, you'll find something to help you learn it. It's a lot better to do that. It'll give you the basics. And for those of you that get stuck, :Q, bang, enter, that'll get you out of any Vim instance.
All right, so final question, and this is also stolen from Tim Ferriss, so thank you, Tim. If you could put a billboard anywhere in the world that, a million people are driving down the highway and they see this billboard, what would it say, and where would you put it?
Oh, man. It would probably say something along the lines of never stop learning. And I would probably just put it on the biggest interstate I could.
The biggest interstate in South Dakota.
No, that ain't much.
Yeah, poor people. A bunch of cows will see it.
Yeah, every day. No, it would probably just never stop learning, because when you stop learning, you've hit your peak.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not ready to peak yet, you got to keep learning. That's all there is to it.
All right, so that actually wraps it up with Briggs Elsperger. Briggs, if people wanted to find you online, get in touch, learn more about you, your work, what you're up to, where can they do so?
Well, the best way to get a hold of me is through email, and you can find that on briggs.dev, which is my portfolio. Other than that, my LinkedIn is just Briggs Elsperger. If you can search that, you'll probably need to put it in the description to get the spelling right.
Yeah.
But that's the best way to get a hold of me, is through my email or LinkedIn.
So
other than that, I'm not really on much other social media. Not my thing.
So LinkedIn, I will link that description below. Website, www.briggs.dev. That's Briggs with 2 G's. And you can find his email on there. Or you can just ask me and I will put you in touch.
Sounds great.
All right, Briggs. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.